do is hand it off to Roger Bradshaw. What I did want to go over quick was Roger's done a lot of work with integrating Race Director with RaceDay scoring. So we have a few points of integration with RaceDay scoring and the Race Director. The idea is that we want to give you guys an easy way to export your Race Director races and import them into RaceDay scoring. So what Roger's going to show you is a race that has happened in Race Director for many years, and we've basically exported it and we're going to import it into RaceDay scoring, and then we're going to collect all the reads, and he's going to show you all that right now. It's a little bit more of a complicated scenario. It is scenario 2 in your folder if you wanted to take a look at it and play around with it. All the data is there for you, but it's not something you need for certification. This is just to give a more in-depth demonstration of the features around a multi-segment race. So, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, Matt. So, first of all, I apologize to all you timers that I know by voice, but I never know by face. It's really great to see you all. So I had turned official retirement age this year. So last year was my Medicare year. This year 66 I hit, so I'm officially retirement age, but I really am not ready to retire at all. I was able to retire from my real job with Gerber and Nestle about 6 years ago and do this job that I love and I still love doing. Still love getting all your phone calls on Saturday mornings, even though you always apologize when you call me. Remember, don't call me on Tuesday afternoon. That's when I play golf. So Saturday mornings are fine. Sunday mornings you'll probably get me out of church, but that's okay. So my goal, as Brian was saying, I really do love this new product. It's coming along really good. I am thrilled that they couldn't sit down and develop it in 2 months and be done with it, because what would that have said? So there's, like we've been saying, if you think about this product in relationship to your race from beginning to end, where you're getting your registration data from different sources like RunSignUp, and you're getting your chip reads from the readers, all of that upfront stuff. I think the strength of RaceDay scoring, I think you go from strength to weakness from beginning to end. The core engine is great for scoring. The connection to the readers, the connection to RunSignUp, the syncing with participants is way simpler than in Race Director. But as we get to the different race scenarios, lap races, cross country, so far don't really have solutions for that yet, but it's coming. My hope, and I think all of our hope, is that we don't all rush over to RaceDay scoring. We want a smart transition as you go from one system to the other. So Race Director is going into what I like to call the sunset. I'm going to start working on Race Director 2020 soon, and it will go through its normal life cycle. In talking with Bob, we're committed to support that through 2023. So we don't have to be in a hurry, and we're really hoping that as you start to look at RaceDay scoring and see the great things that it has, that's going to be the magnet that draws you out of Race Director. So I'm committed to be as knowledgeable about, I should become the biggest super user of RaceDay scoring. I'll certainly be helping support it. This year and in the coming year, I'm working really hard on the bridge between Race Director and RaceDay scoring, and I'm going to kind of show that a little bit. I'm going to show a slightly more complicated race, a triathlon, where we do have some splits. It's a typical setup for a triathlon where there's 3 readers, 2 readers taking 2 occurrences each of transition reads and a finish line reader. Pretty classical setup. This happens to be a race result chip system that we're going to be importing the reads from, and off we go. So I've been spending a lot of time developing in race. If you're a Race Director user, under the file menu, you're going to see 2 new choices: RDS export and RDS import. So that's the way that we're going to get an entire race from one system to the other. So let's take the scenario where, I've timed a couple triathlons and RaceDay scoring now. I'm happy with that. So I'm up to this race that I do every year. So the idea is you would do your normal process at the beginning of the year in Race Director, either using the history and start new year button or cloning the race to get it from the last year into the current year. And then there's a few settings that you'll get used to looking at in Race Director all along the timing locations and settings relative to various chip systems. And after about 5 minutes of that, you would use File, RaceDay Scoring, Export. And then in RaceDay Scoring, under Manage Races, here's the the equivalent to this in Race Director is file restore. So this is how you would restore a race or import a race from a different RaceDay scoring computer or from a Race Director. So Race Director will actually produce an export file that's in the format of what RaceDay scoring expects for an import. So that's how I set up this race. So it's test try. So it's this triathlon. So from top to bottom, this again is a RunSignUp race. This one does have some relay teams. So here's where you see all the participants, and here's where you would see the relay teams. I like this approach for relay teams in that you see the teams listed and you can drill into the teams. Very similar if you're a RunSignUp user of how you could go into the group list and hit that. I love getting your relay team backups because I love looking at the names people come up for relay teams. But in here you can select the team, drill down and see the participants on the team, and even drill into those participants. So I think it's a lot better approach for teams. So we do have relay teams working. Don't yet have what I call aggregate teams or cross-country teams. In my head, it's a coin flip as to whether we'll make it for cross-country season, but I think we might. But if not, just use Race Director. So if I look at the assigned teams for this race, as I was telling you, we have these 3 streams, and in this case, kind of a one-for-one matchup between the streams and the timing locations. So we've got these same 3 timing locations. The settings, all of these settings were actually made in Race Director and exported into RaceDay scoring. This is a triathlon. It's kind of an unusual triathlon from the standpoint that it was a common start-finish line. So the same setup for start-finish in this race as you do in your certification race. That's just a peek at that. This is the scored events. So we have a scored event for both the relay and the open triathlon. And for segments, there's only a slightly different way of looking at segments in RaceDay scoring than in Race Director. For the segments, we start with the swim, and this section at the bottom is important because that describes where this split starts and where it ends. And this is another approach that's a bit better than Race Directors in that, in fact, I just tested a Gran Fondo. That's one of those odd ones where you start and end at different parts of the course, and the parts in between you don't time. So that's not the case here. So for the swim, it starts with the start-finish, occurrence 1, and ends in this trans-in timing location, occurrence 1. And as you go through the segments, guess what? The next one picks up where the last one left off, and it ends on trans-out, occurrence 1. And most of your races are going to have this kind of a feel or setup to it. You also set the distances at the segment level very similarly to how you do for Race Director, other than it gives you the opportunity to assign both the split distance and the cumulative distance. So you see that, and it's much less confusing. In Race Directors, you're always only setting the split distance. Okay, and so as we go through the segments, they just kind of fall one right after the other. And then at the very end, you see the scored event listed again. So this is so we just went through the 5 segments, and now for the actual scored event triathlon, you would see, this would look a little bit different if it were a triathlon. So this is where you would see, the total distance. A cumulative distance doesn't really make any sense for a multi-sport race. But you do see for the triathlon scored event, it starts at start-finish occurrence 1, and it ends at start-finish occurrence 2. So that's how that's going to look. Age groups, those come over directly from Race Director, all set up for you. All right, so in reports, we don't really have a default report for Team Relay. So the default reports that are developed for you for Team Relay really don't make any sense, so I'm actually going to delete them. And we're going to build a report for Team Relay, and so that's build report. And only a couple things you really have to tell it, which scored event do we want to use, Team Relay. And now we're at a point where we can add sections. And hate to keep saying this, but another advantage over Race Director in a standard report is you can put both an overall finish list and age group in the same report. Where in Race Director, those always have to be separate reports. In this case, there's a special sections designed specifically for relay teams, which are called group classifications. So basically, we select that report section and give it a title. All right, so here's our overall relay report, and we'll save it. So we're going to actually see some reads come into the system. So I'm going to start collecting the reads. And then as you do your exercise today, there's really a couple ways of getting the reader to wake up, if you will. One of them is if you just drag a new file into the folder that we have associated with the stream, where that file might have been empty before and now it has a file in it, that will trigger the reads. Another way that works is, so here's my raw data file of start reads, so I'm just going to rename it. As soon as I rename it, yeah, here we go. The reads are coming through. So I'm going to quickly go through like the transition in reads. I'm going to rename that one. So these trans in reads, yep, they're starting to come now. Trans out, we'll rename this one. And we should see some trans out reads coming through. All right, and then we'll go back to our start finish reads, and I'll rename this finish read file. And we should start to see, hopefully this counter go up. And it did. So now we can look at our reports. First, let's look at this relay report. And there's our two relay teams. And if I scroll over, sure enough, those are the correct finish times. You see all the splits. For you triathlon timers, one thing that's on our to-do list is the one thing you'll notice that's missing on how you report splits is we don't have split ranking yet. That's coming. All right, so the next thing you can try is from the home page of RaceDay scoring, there's a place to export your race. So this will be very similar to in Race Director file backup. And next I can create an export, and all of this is working now. And then in Race Director, I can start up Race Director, go to File, RDS Import. And what that does is it looks for your next available unused race number, and it will actually build this RaceDay scoring race in Race Director. So the scenario is we're using RaceDay scoring for scoring the race, but we still like the Race Director kiosk because we like to print on it the receipt labels. And so there's a really nice connection now that only requires a network between RaceDay scoring. So in RaceDay scoring, you've got everything scoring and you're making last minute changes, fixing ages, fixing scored events, and every minute a cycle is going where you're basically turning RaceDay scoring into a server, and Race Director is now on the kiosk screen kind of in what we call client mode. And as people are walking up, after a minute refresh cycle, they're seeing the latest information in RaceDay scoring. So it's a very quick, only need a network, so you don't have to have an internet connection. It's very similar to if you're using the Race Director kiosk connected to a RSU race where you're pulling through the internet connection, except it's much faster and it's directly connected to RaceDay scoring.